Real conversations with real people that have chosen a life of positive impact in business and community. This is Leave It Better with Brandon Trammell. So, Arthur Levitan,
right.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. The idea behind the show is to share some of the experiences and the paths of those who have made their way in business, have come out alive, and have had positive impact on the people that they work with or work for. And you are a Tao Master from one of the oldest lineages, and I truthfully am not even totally sure of the magnitude of that, what that actually, really means. But I do know that you're one of the only ones here in America from that lineage.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe share with us how you found Taoism and how you came to learn from such a long lineage of Taoist masters.
So everything was by accident. Even though if you watch the Kung Fu Panda movie, Master Shifu over there says there's no such thing as accidents or coincidence, right? So my path started when I was in my very early 20s. I ran into a dead end. I was born to immigrant parents, and the mantra that they've adopted in their life was make money and you'll be happy. And that's how they saw America as they immigrated here, and when they looked around them and everything. They came from the Soviet Union where making money was essentially illegal.
Mm-hmm.
So coming to a land where it wasn't just legal, but it was encouraged, they adopted that mantra. And growing up in that environment, I also obviously listened to it, fell victim. And I started my first business when I was 19, just about. Became, for my age and my time and where I came from, became quite successful. Successful enough to buy my own condo, new car, and the pride of my new condo, a huge home entertainment system. Back then, dating myself a lot, it was a 40-inch with a 40-inch deep, right?
Wow, yeah.
So it was still those
3,000 pounds.
Yeah. But it was amazing, right? And I'm sitting there on the couch, my brand new apartment, entertainment system, and I'm miserable. And I don't understand why I'm miserable. I shouldn't be miserable. I followed the mantra to the T.
Right.
So I did the first part. I made money.
Mm-hmm.
Where was the happiness? Wasn't that supposed to come hand in hand? And it didn't. I was just as miserable as before. In fact, probably more so. So the thought that came to my mind after watching Kung Fu movies in the 80s was, I should try something Eastern. And knowing nothing about it except for Kung Fu movies and David Carradine. And next day, a man came into my office looking for a part-time job. And after I interviewed him, decided to hire him, I asked him, what else do you do? Which I never really ask people. In fact, I've never done that. And he said, I teach Buddhism. And it blew my mind. I'm like, how is it that I decided last night and this morning it's sitting in front of me? Right? So unwittingly, I did one of the first lessons of Taoism without even knowing it, which is no hesitation.
Mm-hmm.
When the opportunity presents itself, you don't hesitate. You walk straight through.
Mm-hmm.
And then you figure out everything else. But you move, right? And in movement comes the ability to adjust. When you're standing still, that does not happen. You're paralyzed. There's no adjustments possible. But while you're moving, adjustments are possible. right? So I started studying with him, and I studied Buddhism for 7 years. I was very, very involved in that. And one of the practices I did was learn fasting. So everything everybody's talking about right now, this whole new discovery of intermittent fasting, of blah, 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 etc. Yeah. 20 years ago or so, no, 30 years ago, I was practicing that. And it started out one day, led to 3 days, eventually became 5, 7 days. And I flirted with 12, 15 days, depending on how I felt. All water, no food, and I got really great benefits out of it. It was one of those practices, in fact, it was really the only practice that I got out of Buddhism that I actually enjoyed. And there came a point where I realized that Buddhism did not answer my questions. I started out with certain questions about life, about money, about happiness, about purpose, and there were no answers available. There was a lot of high-end concepts, but there were no real practical answers that I could implement and see results from. And this was after 7 years, and twice a day, every day, for 7 years. So this wasn't a by the way. It wasn't just as a hobby. It was a full-time job.
Yeah.
I left my teacher as soon as I realized that and asked him, and he couldn't answer that for me. I left him. I said, okay, that's as far as I go on this particular path because it does not yield the right results. Again, that wasn't really a conscious decision. It was more on instinct.
Right.
And I decided that after being home miserable some more and now having no teacher and nowhere to go, that the only thing I really enjoyed for the last 7 years was fasting, so I might as well just do that. And I set off on a long fast, which turned out to be 22 days. Wow. It would have been 30 days, but my mom kept calling me like every day and so, and like literally yelling me, what am I doing to myself? So after 22 days, that was enough.
It's a long fast.
It is. Interestingly enough, once you start that practice, once you really get into it, everything beyond day 3 is irrelevant. So the hardest day is day 2 and maybe day 3. Day 1, you're full of piss and vinegar and you're like, yeah, I'm going to do this. Day 2, you're sort of, looking in the direction of your refrigerator longingly and everything. And day 3, depending on the day, it's kind of shaky. But after that, once you switch, that's it. After day 3, makes no difference whatsoever. And I actually worked out and I slept more. But anyways, the reason that I'm telling that story is as soon as that fast ended, within a day or two, I got a really weird phone call from somebody telling me there was a house for sale in a town I've never heard of, but I could get it for a good price and flip it in a couple of days because the owner got into legal problems and needed a very quick sale.
Okay.
And I said yes, again, without understanding why. Not that I was in the house flipping business or anything like that. I bought this house. I got engaged within a couple of weeks and realized that instead of flipping, I should just probably live in it. Okay, fine. It had beautiful flowers growing and stuff like that. So I said, let's live here. And it turned out to be across the street from a Taoist temple. Now, along with Buddhism came business failure. Because if you try to practice Buddhism while trying to do a business, you will absolutely fail. Because it has no real tools of how to deal with capitalism or how to deal with the Western world.
Right.
It's not what it was designed for.
Sure.
Not that it's a bad philosophy. It just didn't work for me. It doesn't mean it won't work for others. There's no judgment here. This is just the fact that it went contrary in my practice and experience to owning a business.
Right.
So after sitting home playing Xbox, driving my wife back and forth to work playing Xbox for a couple of months, I realized that I needed to do something with my life, but I had no clue what to do.
Mm.
So I walked across the street to the temple, and lots of things happened. It was an interesting experience. It was a very odd place. I've never seen anything like it. I didn't have any reference points for it. Anyways, long story short, it took me about 6 more months to actually start going there.
Mm-hmm.
And that actually changed my life, because not only did I learn Taoism and its practices, I started a business that I built with Taoist principles and navigated insane amount of growth. We went from 0 to 500 people in less than 6 years.
Wow.
Insane amount of challenges. There were challenges on a daily basis, and some of them were small, and on a weekly basis, sure enough, there'd be something huge.
Mm-hmm.
And navigating all of that were these Taoist principles that I was learning. And I was learning it because I was still a novice, but I would come home every night, go to my teacher, sit down with him, usually would take a bottle of vodka or something to bribe him to actually want to talk to me long enough.
Yeah, good
And
incentive.
well, you got to bring a sacrifice. A sacrifice is always important when you're trying to get something, right?
True.
So, and he would tell me he didn't know business at all, but he knew Taoism. So I would describe to him the situation. He would give me a principle that I should be thinking about, and he would give me a probable course of action based on that principle. And it always worked. It absolutely always worked. The only time it stopped working was when I stopped doing it. When I stopped practicing it, that's when everything went south.
Right.
And long story short, 2009, I opened my own school. In 2012, I started traveling to China to study with teachers there as well. And mostly really to augment my knowledge, not as much to start from the beginning, but just to keep adding depth to what I already learned and to see different angles, which was important actually. And in 2012, also wound up again by accident at a Taoist, the oldest continuously operated Taoist temple in the world, which is in Chengdu, China, Qinchen Mountain. And the cool thing about that temple, other than everything, the cool thing about that temple is that's where they drew Kung Fu Panda movies from.
Is that right?
So, yes. So it instantly endeared me to the place. In 2016, after studying there and going back and forth, I was called up and ordained by their traditions as a master and priest. And there aren't a lot of us in the West. In fact, a really great one who was in the same temple as I was passed away recently, which makes it even one less. But here's why this is important. This is a horribly long story to a very short question you asked.
Well,
In Taoism, like in almost all real Chinese traditions, 90% of the techniques, practices, and secrets were transmitted orally, and only orally. What we find in books, including the Tao Te Ching, is really only 5 to 10% of the knowledge available to people.
yeah.
So when people are reading the Tao Te Ching by themselves, I tell them, it's great for poems, but you're not going to find anything there. And it's not because I'm trying to be an ass. In fact, just the opposite. I'm trying to have them waste less of their time, because it was actually designed as a school book for a teacher and a student.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't designed to be read by itself, by yourself.
Right.
So, and why the lineage is important? Because in the West, we don't have these traditions. So we don't really understand them from the Eastern point of view. But because 90% were transmitted orally, and even in that 90%, a ton of it was transmitted through energy by being face-to-face with a teacher.
Right.
So who even knows if 10% was printed, 90% was orally, who even knows the iceberg energetically that's there?
Yeah.
What happened was the secrets, the knowledge, the trainings were kept in the lineages.
Right.
What happened was, as communism took over China, Mao wanted to secure his hold on power, and he instituted what was called the Cultural Revolution, wherein he encouraged young people to go out, destroy temples, kill priests, kill teachers, all in a bid to secure his power.
Sure.
So where there were hundreds, maybe thousands of lineages before, by the time everything was said and done, there was a handful.
Wow.
And where I got lucky, and us in the West got lucky, is that one of those people with a lineage escaped before the Cultural Revolution really got going and wound up living in Moscow and training my teacher.
Wow.
Right? So that's why lineages are important, is because they hold the real secrets, the knowledge, the understandings, how to resolve paradox, and frankly, the ability to pass it on to the next generation.
For sure. You in that story, you shared something that has been really powerful for me. So I fancy myself a bit of a student of yours, and I've learned a great deal from you over the time that we've been working together. And you pointed out that the book, the Tao Te Ching, is not meant for an individual to dissect and decipher on their own.
Right.
Now, as we have been working together and reading through some text, and you really highlighting for me the pillars of Taoism and the principles that guide behavior and action, I have been able to learn so much about applying these principles to my everyday life, not just in business. Obviously, for me, it's been instrumental in my growth as an individual and the growth of my business. And that's not because you taught me business secrets. It's because you taught me, and I learned with you, these principles that give us the ability to level the seas a little bit in turbulent times, to really take the lessons that nature and life have to teach us on an everyday, moment by moment basis. Had I read that book alone, I can tell you right now, probably about 10% of it is what I would have actually understood and been able to contextualize into my life. So I have really appreciated that student-teacher relationship, which is not the student-teacher relationship that a lot of people, a lot of our listeners would really imagine in their brain, right? Because we're taught by teachers starting at a very young age, all throughout school. And those teachers tell us what we need to know, what we need to do, and how we need to do it.
Right.
This arrangement, this relationship between you and I as teacher and student has created a whole lot of unlearning for me, because I was used to that kind of relationship between a student and a teacher. Tell me what to do, I'll do it. Tell me how to think, I'll think that way.
Right.
Instead, what you have taught me is not, hey, Brandon, here's how you do that. But, hey, Brandon, here is some guiding principle that can apply to these different situations. Now, how you apply that is not up to me. It's up to you. So that teaching of skills of learning myself and knowing my limitations, knowing my skill sets, and applying those in everyday situations has just been, I mean, nothing short of life-changing for me.
It's so wonderful to hear.
So how have you taken those principles and those pillars and applied them? Give me a specific sort of, for example, for how you leveraged those principles of Taoism in the business that was, I mean, just wildly explosive in growth and so successful.
Mm-hmm. So, not an easy question to answer. Let's start in the beginning.
Sure.
The beginning starts with knowing who you are. Mm. Knowing who you are allows you to be grounded. Mm-hmm. And once you as a leader or an entrepreneur, founder, once you're grounded in yourself, then you're able to augment yourself in a way that would not be possible before, because since you know who you are, you also know where you need help. Mm-hmm. You also know the kind of people you want to bring in. And because you're grounded in yourself, you don't get triggered if those people are fundamentally smarter or better than you, because that's actually the key to success, right? Surround yourself with incredibly talented people. And the secret is, that's not the secret. Everybody knows that secret. But the secret is leave them the fuck alone. Right?
Yes.
So, but because you are grounded, those people will coalesce around you because they need grounding themselves and they don't have that within themselves. Mm. Because you've cultivated something they don't have, they look to you for that grounding. You look to them for the skills that they do have. And together you become interdependent. Mm-hmm. And by being interdependent through the whole team does significantly better. And you as part of that team do significantly better. Mm-hmm. Right? It is not for the one person. It is for everybody. Right? When I walk when I try to start a business or think of a business or become part of a team, the idea is not to enrich myself. The idea is to create a team that will execute amazingly. Mm-hmm. And once it executes amazingly, money follows instantly, because that's the result. Right. Money is the result of what we do best. And what we do best is not make money. What we do best is amazing execution. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. Because that's the focus. Right. And because we're interdependent with each other, we don't get triggered because somebody else does something better, right? We all bring something unique to the table. And even when there's overlap, that's okay. We work together on that. I have time, I have bandwidth, I'll take care of it. I don't, listen, just somebody else please step up, right? Yeah. So that's when I work with CEOs, one of the things that they really don't expect is the lesson that I'm trying to impart upon them is not how to be a great CEO or do well in business. They can figure that out for themselves. There's 1,000 books and lectures and so on and so on. Sure. What I'm trying to do is to make them as good of a human as they can be. Mm. Right? So be as much as themselves as they can be. And most importantly, then, when they show up for whoever, whether it's just walking into the office, meeting with investors, meeting with team members, they should be cultivating a consistency of character. Mm-hmm. In other words, you show up the same whether you won a $100 million contract or lost a $100 million contract. Mm-hmm. You show up as who you are. The more you do that, the more your team then can focus on the execution and not manage your emotions. Right. Right? And the more they take their cues from you, since you're stable and you're consistent, the team starts to reflect that as well. They don't even know it. Your job is not to tell them, do this, do this. Your job is to show up in a way that they can model you as a human. Right? As human beings, we're modeling creatures. We look at another human and subconsciously, sometimes consciously, we try to see if that behavior fits on us, or if that human being is successful, we're like, well, what are they doing? What is Elon's 6 keys to success? No meetings. God damn it, all the meetings are canceled. Right?
Yeah.
We do that. This is how we do it. This is what made us this amazing species on this planet.
Sure.
Right? But if the CEO, founder, entrepreneur, whoever it is reflecting not great qualities, if they're unstable, if they're day to day, you cannot predict how they'll react and everything, then all you're doing in that point is, number one, subconsciously mirroring that, and you'll become less stable. And number two, all you're worried about in your job is how to manage the CEO.
Right.
Right? So the only people that are left in that team are the ones who are best at managing the CEO and not executing.
Right.
So what happens, right? It goes badly, poorly, sideways.
Right. Yeah. I think, for me, as I sort of like and in my mission on this podcast of really sharing the stories of, social entrepreneurs, people in business who have, really decided that positive impact, whether that's social or environmental, is keystone for them. Right. I think what is very easy to miss is that the mission of positive social or environmental impact can only be positive if we bring humanness, ourselves, fully to every business dealing, to every engagement with an employee or with a potential collaboration partner or a vendor or all the different stakeholders of the business. And the community is one of those. So the motivations underlying that positive impact are really what propel that positive impact. And, I've said it before. I said it in conversation with one of my previous guests. We can't share what we don't have. Right. So if we are approaching a situation like we're bringing this stormy water with us as a business leader, then what we can expect to be pervasive throughout our company and everything that we do is turbulence.
It's exactly right. What's inside of you will be on the outside of you, regardless. Yes.
And as we navigate life and we are, sort of sailing these turbulent internal waters, but we're trying we're trying to have others believe that we've got it all under control, that everything is good to go, that we're happy and successful. There's a disconnect between who we are inside and what we're projecting outside.
Absolutely.
So there is zero chance for a consistency to be present.
And there's also so long that you can live 2 lives.
Yes.
Right? They will both begin to suffer.
100%.
Right? So the more you are the more you are yourself, the more you get grounded in who you are and what your talents are and what they're not, etc., the more you just are. You're living in a way of unthinking action or effortlessness, right? Where you're not putting energy into your daily life to enjoy life and to be in life. Because there's not 2 conversations happening, the one on the outside and the one on the inside, right? And God forbid, you mixed up which one is which, and the wrong one is having that conversation. I mean, that's fatal. Yeah. Right? So you're always, not only are you spending energy on the separate personality, which isn't real, right? You're also living in fear on a daily basis that you will be found out, that you will slip up somewhere.
Yeah.
So fear soaks up energy, fear paralyzes, and like we talked about before, if you're in fear and paralyzed, you cannot adapt to change because you're not moving.
Right.
Right? All these things are really simple to talk about. They're hard to execute, but really simple to talk about.
Yeah, simple but not easy. I think that is, something that's important to understand, right? Because in the Western world, teachers and coaches and those who are positioning themselves as gurus, the narrative really is, this is easy. Mm-hmm. Just listen to me. I'll tell you what you need and what you need to do, and then you just go out and do it. And there's something lost, and most assuredly there is something very deficient about that perspective.
Well, you're absolutely right. And the difference is, so in Taoism, it was really meant for warriors. It was really meant for people who are really trying, not fighters on the street, right, although they could be, but it was meant for warriors, people who are interested in following their own path, right? And if you're interested in following your own path, listening to somebody else tell you what to do is not going to bring good results on your own path. Because when somebody tells you what to do, they're telling you about their path. They're not telling you about your path. So if you're executing their path, you're not living yours. So fundamentally, the results aren't going to be good, right? So in Taoism, the tradition is not for me to tell you what to do. In Taoism, the tradition is for me to help you create a way of thinking that you can find the answer for yourself in any situation, right? So it's the difference in the Western way of, in the American culture, we say learning how to fish as opposed to just getting a fish, right?
Yep.
So learning how to think in a way that gets you to the answer, not what to think. Right. What you think is your role, right? But learning how to think is my role, is to help you create that structure within yourself so that you can get to any answer anywhere. So it's always yours.
The power of that, I think, is really hard to quantify, and I think it's showing itself as a major deficiency, a major problem in America right now, where we're being handed what to think on a daily basis without being equipped with the state of being and the state of mind and the tools to critically think through those things in a way and decipher that information in a way that is right for us as an individual, not a collective us, but for us as an individual. And in a lot of our conversations together and sessions, that topic of really learning to operate in the world in such a way that works for us as an individual or us as a family, or as, whatever the cocoon is, right? Whether that's blood family or, acquired family, right? To operate in a way that works for us, and thinking less about like what society is telling us we ought to be doing, can be really, really difficult.
Yes.
And I know that's been a challenge for me throughout my entire life, right? We learn to take what's told and use it.
But you're never taught to even question it, right?
Correct.
You're taught not to question. Well, the teacher's in the front of the room. That's the authority figure. Right. And you'll get a gold star if you repeat what the teacher said.
Right.
And that's it. And the ones that get a gold star, and for some reason you don't want to do that, well, then you'll go home without a gold star. And sooner or later, that begins to worry you. Yeah. Why does everybody else have a gold star and, I'm the schmuck in the corner without one? But I got to tell you, it's the black sheep of our society that actually really, really do amazing things.
Yeah.
Right? It's the ones that actually don't fit in that are able to create amazing change. And they're the ones asking, really, is this right for me, or is this the path I want to follow? And that's really what separates them. Nothing else. They're not smarter. They're not better. They're not faster. They, for some reason, their instincts are just constantly nagging at them. Is this really for you? Is this really what you need? That's all it is.
Yeah.
But that's really what, speaking of the way you do things, which I admire a lot as well, is that you try to educate your clients on financial matters so that they have the answer for themselves rather than having to call you every time to try to get to that answer, right?
Yeah.
It's much better to be a guide than just a guy who has all the answers all the time. That's really tiring.
It is 100% depleting, without any question. And I think what I have learned the most, and I think one of the most powerful things is really by providing people with a framework for how to think about things, how to view things, and then taking that and critically thinking about and really checking in with yourself about what feels like the most appropriate and beneficial course of action for you.
Right.
And that is, I think, one of the major differences. It's why I don't use the title financial advisor. I think it's why, like, internally, that moniker has always held friction for me, because I don't see a whole lot of value in advising you on what to do. I see far more value in educating you around the things that are important for you to consider as you decide for yourself.
And the result will be better, right?
100%.
And that's how we need to check the results, right?
Yeah.
We always need to go back and see, well, I created this action, or I did this. What is the result? And the result is really, really simple.
Mm-hmm.
Is my life getting better or getting worse?
Right.
That's it. No judgment, right?
No.
Either I went the right way and I got to the street that I needed to, or I went the wrong way and I just have to find a different way of going. Right. But in either case, no judgment, no big deal. The results weren't the ones that are moving my life in the right direction. Let's go and try something else.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Course correction. And you said it right at the top of the conversation, right? If you're not in action, you can't adjust. If you're standing still, there are no adjustments.
Right.
So
and
being in action.
It's important, to add a little bit of kung fu into it.
I love kung fu. Go for it.
But taking no action is just as much of an action as taking action.
Mm-hmm.
So you realize that right now is not the time to act, and you don't act. Mm-hmm. That's just as much of an action as if you would have taken action.
Yeah.
So understanding what to do in the moment is incredibly important. Whether I choose restraint and I wait for the opportunity to shape in a way that I can walk through it, or the opportunity is right in front of me and without hesitation I need to walk right in and take advantage of it.
Mm.
So either one, right?
Yeah.
Being in a state of anxiety and rushing in when you shouldn't is wrong. Mm-hmm. But also being in a state of hesitation and not taking advantage instantly is also wrong. Both of those lead to the wrong conclusion.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
And that's what like you beautifully said, a framework helps you understand. What do I do right now in this junction? Do I leap forward instantly and deal with the consequences, or do I choose restraint and see what develops from this?
Yeah. And I think too, in what you just said, there's a highlighting of a real core principle in Taoism, and it's illustrated perfectly by the symbol that's on your shirt. By the way, I absolutely love. Can you show us the shirt real quick, because I want to bring this up real quick? Yes, the Tao of Pooh.
Yes.
An amazing book, and actually the beginning of our journey together, reading through the Tao of Pooh, which I thought ahead of time, like, what? we're not reading some thousands-year-old text to get these principles, right?
It's just been translated by Disney.
Yes, and adapted to Disney characters, which are an absolute perfect display of the different sort of kind of ways that people operate in the world, how they view and perspective. And I think that's probably a show in and of itself. But what I was driving at is one of the most keystone principles in Taoism is balance. And it is perfectly illustrated by the symbol, right? And what I'm driving at is you highlighted in what you just said, the balance between masculine and feminine energies and approaches. Mm-hmm. Will you unpack the balance? Because I think the misunderstanding for a lot of people is that masculine means man and feminine means woman. And though there are pieces of that in masculine and feminine, that's not the end of the story.
No, well, in a symbol here, which is, by the way, probably the best logo ever.
Agreed.
Somebody did a great job. Whatever that branding studio was, if there was a way to go back thousands of years and talk to them, oh my God. Can you imagine? Anyway.
The genius.
But that's all it is, really. It's a logo, but it's a logo that fully describes the whole philosophy of Taoism. Mm-hmm. And the way it does that is black representing yin or female, right? The shadow side of the mountain. Mm-hmm. Yan representing male, or the sunny side of the mountain. Mm-hmm. Neither one of them is better or worse. Mm-hmm. They're just a different time of day. Right. The sun falls in that particular way, right? Mm-hmm. But the reality of this symbol is this whole world is controlled by the interaction of opposites. In fact, Newton said it, right? So long ago. Mm-hmm. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? Yep. So this world is about opposites interacting. And the little squiggly line here represents the push and pull of opposites, but to what end? To the end that it creates flow of energy. That's why it's circular. Mm-hmm. Okay? So the push and pull of opposites creates circular energy. It doesn't mean equal push and pull.
Right.
It means for the right time, one is pushing more, the other one's pulling less, etc., etc., etc. Right? Because as you see, right here, the black is much more, the white is barely any. So there's a time when there's a time for yin, there's a time for female, which is characterized by recovery, characterized by slow, characterized by soft, characterized by yielding, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And then there's a time for male, which is characterized by pushing, by hardness, by etc., right? Mm-hmm. The combination of them, knowing when to be in which one, is the most important. But it is just as important to understand that in the female energy, you'll be using much less energy. But you also won't be going as far.
Right.
Right? So preparation, using less energy, but then it's time for action. That's when male comes to the party, right? Mm-hmm. You execute something. You push. You create momentum. In order for you to continue doing that, you have to actually back off, go back into the female to recuperate, so that when it comes time to explode again, you have all that energy available to you.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So if you don't do that, let's imagine that you live in America, and
I'll imagine,
right? Yeah. And our society is all about, you're a go-getter. You have to go out there and make your own destiny, and you have to push, and you have to make it happen. Your intentions, visualize. Anyways, all that is male energy. So you're pushing. It's tense. You're pushing. It's tense. You're pushing. It's tense. At a certain point, you start to get tired. But instead of slowing down and going back into rest, relax, you keep pushing. You keep pushing. You keep pushing. Even past the point that you've done your best. Once you've done your best, everything you do afterwards is negative returns on investment, right? Mm-hmm. But because you don't know that, because you don't realize that, you keep pushing. So you're getting negative returns on investment now. Even something you might have done right now turns completely the opposite.
Yeah.
A great way of saying that is you'll keep talking yourself out of a sale. Right?
Yep.
You've made the sale. It's done. Shut up.
Yeah. I've done that many, many times throughout the course of my career. Yes, sir.
We all have.
Yes.
So this is what this framework gives you. It's not magic. It's
Right.
all based on nature. And it's all based on warriors supporting each other through thousands of years, helping each other understand this and helping each other through their own navigation of their own path in life. Because I'll be honest with you, I can't do it all by myself. There's no way. I had amazing teachers. I had not only amazing teachers here, I had amazing teachers there. I stumbled on not so amazing teachers, but even in their not so amazingness, if that's a word, then it is not. Then they taught me by what they did wrong. Right? So there's something to learn from everybody if you just get yourself out of the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So I would say this is not the way I would like to live. Why? Because I see that person and this is not right for me. Great. They just taught me an amazing lesson.
Right. Yeah.
Instead of judging them, right, and pushing them away, you don't judge them. You bring them in close, you accept them, and then you measure. Is this right for me or wrong for me?
Yeah.
Well, you know what? That way of living does not feel right to me. Great. Don't do it.
Don't live that way.
Right. It may be right for this person. For them, it may be the right results. But don't judge it, because as soon as you judge them, you push them away, and it's no longer available to you as a lesson.
Man, that is everything. That right there. You just brought up two things that I think are so critical. Firstly, nature, right? When we want to look to, and this is something that I've learned over the course of my life, but very, very acutely and in a very focused way in our work together, is if we want to find lessons for how to live in a beneficial way, look to nature. Right. And we hear this kind of coming up in certain circles of business, right? A lot of social entrepreneurs and people who are thinking about nature, right? And the preservation of it. Biomimicry is a concept that has come up, right? And I think is critically important. When we look to nature, we don't see judgment. There is no, the wolf who is out there, in their pack is not looking at the other wolves in the pack and going, God, you're such a loser, right? Or like, you're such a terrible wolf. You're so weak,
right? You got a white patch,
all right?
And that's just gross.
I mean, out of style,
right?
But yet we do that, right? We see that modeled for us in human construct a lot. And that lack of judgment leads to an openness to receive lessons from those who society may judge as weak, insufficient, or less than desirable.
Right. But it also, if you turn that internally, it also allows us to then perceive ourselves.
Indeed.
As long as we're judging ourselves, right?
Yes.
We are pushing ourselves away.
Right.
Right? So,
yeah.
So as long as we keep pushing ourselves away, we have no clear view on who we are, which means that we will wind up in situations that are beyond our skill set.
Yeah.
Right?
Pushing our own limitations beyond where they allow.
Right. But if we don't judge ourselves and we see, you know what, I'm good at this. I'm personally not great at jumping. I suck at running. I'm horrible on piano. I mean, there's so many things. But if I don't understand that, then I will spend a long time of my life trying to play piano, which I have no natural gift for.
Right.
But take that into business now.
Mm.
Let's say I was always a founder, entrepreneur, CEO. And why is that? Because I suck as an employee.
It's a good thing to know. I happen to share that with you.
I sucked. The last time I worked at an ice cream store, I got fired because I sucked as an employee. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, why is that? It's because there's no fun, challenge, or interest for me in that.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean it's wrong for somebody else. It's right, or whatever, for somebody else. But for me, I found out that it was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So I was left with fewer choices than getting a job. I was left with fewer choices because it's damn hard to start a company. Mm-hmm. And even harder still to have it successful enough to pay you, for your rent. Mm. So it's a harder path. But because I knew I had no choice, I didn't judge it. I didn't blame it. I just got down and did the work.
Right.
Because I knew that was right for me because everything else didn't work. Mm. Right? So there was no judgment on my part.
Right.
But so that allowed me access to, hey, potentially this is what you're good at and everything else in you suck. Okay. So why would I then focus on what my neighbor is good at, what my father is good at, what my brother is good at, when I should just focus on what I'm good at?
Mm. And that therein lies the lesson that I learned. The act of judging others is really just an act of judging myself.
Yes.
And I cast that judgment out onto other people and other places and cultures and all the different things. And in that judgment, I diminish my ability to lean into my strengths because I'm so concerned and so busy judging myself for not having the strengths of others or the strengths that society and our culture really supports and holds out as the most beneficial and the best way. I spend so much time judging myself for not having those strengths and those skills that I'm not able to lean into and leverage the skills and the strengths that I do have. And so my gift is never shared with the world in its full capacity, whatever that gift might be.
Right.
Without judgment, every gift for each person has power and benefit if we can lean into that.
And it goes further, right? Mm. As soon as you understand, this is where we started a lot of our conversations from. As soon as you understand your gift and what you're good at, you can be in true interdependence with others.
Yes.
Because their gifts are augmenting you instead of triggering you.
Mm-hmm.
You don't wonder, well, why can, Joe Schmo or Mary over there, they do that so well and I'm really not great at it. That never crosses my mind. It's like, dude, thank God you're with me. You do that so well. Oh my God. Great.
Right.
I'll do what I do best. You do what you do best. That's how we, as a species, sitting around a campfire long, long ago, that's how we survived. Mm-hmm. Hey, you're good at fishing. You're good at hunting. You can make bow and arrow, right? You can't fire a bow and arrow, but you can make them.
Right.
Right? But because you can't fire them, does that mean you don't eat? No, you'll eat because I went and hunted with your bow and arrow.
Right.
And we'll both eat because of that.
Yes.
Right? That's true interdependence. That's the real deal. That's what makes us the most human possible. Mm-hmm. And yet we throw it away on a daily basis by me, and it's all about me. And we keep ourselves in silos, and you have to do it alone, and it's only when you do it alone does it really count. Yeah. Since when? When have human beings ever done anything alone?
Never in the history of our species, and America especially, and in the West especially, we have really leaned into this rugged individualism that, right. Self-made, which is a absolute farce. I mean, that's total bullshit. There is zero people that are alive in success in business or achievement that have done that on their own. They've learned from countless people. They've been mentored. They've been taught. I mean, you know, none of this is original. I mean, we learn from each other.
The lonely cowboy riding out into the sunset is simply lost.
Mm.
He just lost his way. That's all it is.
And they made a movie about it.
They made a movie.
Oh, yeah. That lost cowboy is, you know, he's the pioneer.
Right. He's there looking at some map going, where the fuck is he?
See, that's what you don't see, right? Because it's just the silhouette of the cowboy and the sun in his background. He's actually looking at a map as he's riding away into the sunset. Where the fuck am I going?
Well, what did Bugs Bunny say? That it should have taken the left at Albuquerque?
Yes. One of my favorite lines. Love me some Bugs Bunny. Could learn a lot from Bugs, right?
Oh my God.
You know, I absolutely will scream this from the mountaintops as often and as many times as I can, that the highest order of thinking and of action is interdependence. And I know that because this planet and every other planet in existence that we don't even know about has been doing it for eons.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I mean, you don't, the systems of nature are just even hard to fathom in their entirety because of the way that they work together. The tree doesn't get mad at the wind for blowing off its leaves. But that is a necessary part of the systems of nature, to shed those leaves in the fall, to go into rest.
And the leaves will become earth, soil, in a few cycles.
And food and all the other things, right, that create soil and life. So all those things work together. And then we kind of zoom in down to the human, and the human being thinks, well, I know all of that is happening out there, but that doesn't have any application to me. I need to carve this path. I need to cut this tree. I need to dam this river. To what end, right? Stopping up the system.
It's exactly right. And that's why I really enjoy the title of your path, which is Leave It Better. And as we talked about before, in nature, everything is paid forward. Right? Everything.
Yep.
In nature, everything's paid forward. The birds, the animals, they raise their young. They give everything to their young, right? I mean, if you catch a fish that's full of roe, that fish will taste horrible, right? Because it gave all of its essence, all of its nutrients, all of who it was to that roe, right?
Yep.
You know, it's true for lobsters. Male lobsters taste way better than female lobsters, especially when they have roe and stuff like that. Again, why? Same reason. We give everything forward, right?
Yeah.
And in nature, nothing comes back and says, hey, thanks, Dad. I mean, no bird ever like flies out of the nest, goes back like a season or two later and goes, you know, that was really great. You pushed me out just in time, or you fed me the worms and everything, and I really appreciate it. If I can ever, you know, bring a worm for you. Sure. No, because it knows its job is to pay it forward. It will give everything to its offsprings.
Right. Without needing that offspring to come back to it and say, what a great job parenting you did, Mom. Yeah.
People get pissed off. What the hell are you doing here? You want to eat my lunch? Get the hell out of there. Go find your own work.
Why are you here? Yeah, no, this is, man. I think,
paying it forward is that you literally, to move things forward, not backwards, but you give to move things forward so that your children can move things forward again. Again, going in line with nature.
Right.
Trying to hoard it all and trying to just to do something just for you and not for the environment around you is the opposite of nature.
Indeed.
And when you go against nature, bad things happen.
Well, we certainly are seeing a lot of that play out, I think, in our current, with our current environmental challenges and what's happening with the earth. And I don't know, maybe I just cast a judgment on nature as though nature isn't doing exactly what it should be doing.
It's doing exactly what it should. It's getting rid of us slowly.
Right. Right. Just eliminate the scourge, Right.
Yeah. Well, we are the virus, as they said in the Matrix.
Yeah. Well, it's, I find so much solace and balance in the lessons that I've been able to glean from you, and from taking those lessons and applying them. How did that work for me? And where did these principles that, we read through and all of that, how does that show up in my life? And how, in action, how did that work for me? Doing it that way. Oh, well, that didn't work. Okay, don't do that anymore. But that's not actually what that principle was trying to tell me. So if I tweak that and I apply it, I make an adjustment in my action, then I go, wait, that did work. That worked for me.
Right.
Applying that principle the same way for somebody completely different might work. It might not work, but that's for them to...
Will create a different result because they're different. Right. Their path is different.
Right. Man. Arthur, I can't say enough about the value that I feel in our friendship, in our student-teacher relationship. I've learned a great deal from you. And in that vein, I want to share that in that pay-it-forward way. I want to be able to share all of your value and all of your perspective with everybody else. So if somebody said to themselves, man, I could probably learn a lot from that Arthur guy, how do they find you? Where do they find you? And how can they work with you?
So, just like everything else, I'm not right for everybody. So, if you like the way I spoke and you like my face long enough, then maybe we have something. The way I teach is very specific. So the first thing to understand as somebody trying to find any kind of help or teacher or guide in this world is that person right for me? Doesn't mean they're the smartest. It doesn't mean they're the most clever. It doesn't mean anything. It just means that they're right for you for right now. Mm-hmm. That's the number one thing to try to understand before even thinking of contacting anybody, before even going down that road. Mm-hmm. That is this path, is this person, are they right for me? Because if they're not, your system is going to rebel against the advice they give. Yeah. So you're going to waste your time and money. You're going to waste somebody else's time and money. And ultimately, it will lead to bad results. Mm-hmm. Right? Yeah. So that's why I prefer to work with less people than more. Mm-hmm. Because I can make more of an impact on an individual than I can on a whole big group. Yeah. And as an individual, we can better tell if we're right for each other. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right? That's really the number one thing to understand. And after that, if you're still looking for punishment, looking for a way to find me, the email to use is info@californiatao.org. Mm-hmm. And you'll get to me and we'll have a conversation. We'll find out if we're right for each other. Ultimately, the people who do find me are people who are either in crisis and really need help with that, or entrepreneurs, founders, CEOs, people who are really trying to build something. Yeah. And I'm just that's just a small group of people. I'm just saying these are the kinds of people.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter for which walk of life you're at. All these tools, they don't really care whether you've just started something or been doing it for a long time. Sure. Your market size is 10 people or 10 million. Makes no difference at all. It's all the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Well, you wrote a book, Outlast.
I appreciate that. See, I'm not great at promoting myself.
Well,
I appreciate that. See, this is one more thing I suck at.
I'm also not very good at it, so this is why I have conversations with others instead of doing this on my own. So Outlast is your book.
Yes.
And where can people find it?
It's on Amazon at Outlast. I wrote this book after I got through a very challenging 3 years of being in crisis.
Right.
I wrote that book because I got through my crisis using Taoist tools. In fact, that was the only thing that helped me. Everything else just didn't even come close.
Right.
And it's not a matter of getting through crisis. You have to survive and thrive.
Mm-hmm.
Just getting through is not enough.
Wow.
So this book is very, very short, less than 100 pages, and it's basically tools that I've used and realizations that I've had that were extremely helpful of how to get through situations while in crisis.
Well, I think that could be useful for a whole lot of us around the world, and certainly here in America. I know I found all the words very, very powerful and helpful for me in navigating the past couple of years as we've been through all of this and with the pandemic and everything else. So I would encourage everyone and anyone to grab that book, read through it, and you can always reach out to Arthur through that email address, info@californiadao.com or .org. And if you want to further that learning or find out if he's a good fit for you, I think there's a good place to start. So
appreciate it, Brandon.
Arthur, thank you so much for being with me today. Even though we're across the country, I feel your presence and I appreciate you. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
If you like what you've heard, make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. For even more inspiration, head over to our YouTube channel, Leave It Better with Brandon Trammell, and subscribe to watch videos from podcast episodes, gain insights around getting right with your money, finding joy in everyday life, and achieving contentment in a crazy world. And remember, wherever you go, whoever you're with, whatever you do, always aim to leave it better than you found it.